1983 Soviet nuclear false alarm incident. On 26 September 1983, during the Cold War, the nuclear early warning radar of the Soviet Union reported the launch of one, then several American Minuteman intercontinental ballistic missiles from bases in the United States. These missile attack warnings were suspected to be false alarms by Stanislav Petrov, an officer of the Soviet Air Defense Forces on duty at the command center of the early warning system. He decided to wait for corroborating evidence rather than immediately relaying the warning up the chain of command. This decision is seen as having prevented a retaliatory nuclear attack against the United States and its NATO allies, which would likely have resulted in an escalation to a full-scale nuclear war. Investigation of the satellite warning system later determined that the system had indeed malfunctioned. The incident occurred at a time of severely strained relations between the United States and the Soviet Union. Just 3 weeks earlier, the Soviet military had shot down Korean Airlines Flight 007, killing all 269 people on board, including sitting Congressman Larry McDonald. The United States had condemned the attack, and heightened tensions were running high. President Ronald Reagan had recently called the Soviet Union an evil empire and announced his intention to deploy intermediate-range nuclear missiles in Western Europe later in the year. On the night of 26 September 1983, Stanislav Petrov was the duty officer at Serpukhov 15, the secret bunker outside Moscow that housed the command center for the Soviet early warning satellite system. The system, known as OKO, was designed to detect launches of American intercontinental ballistic missiles by observing their exhaust plumes using infrared sensors on satellites positioned over the United States. At approximately 0030 Moscow time, the computers at the command center began showing that a single American missile had been launched from Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. The warning appeared on Petrov's monitor, and an alarm began sounding. Under Soviet protocol, Petrov was required to immediately report the missile launch to his superiors, who would then have little time to decide whether to launch a retaliatory nuclear strike before the incoming missile could reach Soviet territory. However, Petrov was suspicious of the computer indication for several reasons. First, he had been told that any American first strike would involve hundreds of missiles in order to disable Soviet nuclear forces, not just one. Second, the satellite system was relatively new and had experienced some problems. Third, ground-based radar, which should have been able to confirm the missile launch, was not detecting anything. Petrov decided to wait and see if additional missiles would be detected before reporting the alert. Within minutes, the computer system began indicating that additional missiles had been launched, eventually showing a total of 5 incoming missiles. Despite the mounting computer evidence of an attack, Petrov still suspected a false alarm. The number of missiles being reported was still far fewer than what would be expected in a real American first strike. After several tense minutes, Petrov reported the alerts as a computer malfunction rather than an actual missile attack. His superiors accepted his assessment, and no retaliatory strike was ordered. Later investigation revealed that the false alarm had been caused by a rare alignment of sunlight on high-altitude clouds in the satellite's infrared sensors, which created a signal that the computer interpreted as missile launches. The incident was kept secret by the Soviet Union and only became widely known after the end of the Cold War. Petrov initially received little recognition for his actions and was even criticized by some of his superiors for not following proper protocol. However, he was later honored by various organizations for potentially preventing nuclear war. The incident has been cited as an example of how technical failures and human judgment can interact in dangerous ways in nuclear command and control systems.